What if the greatest joy of heaven is not what you receive? What if heaven is not mainly about streets of gold, not reunions, not mansions, not even freedom from pain, but about something far greater? What if the greatest promise in the entire Bible is this? God Himself will live with us, not distant, not hidden, not experienced only through prayer, faith, or moments of worship, but fully, personally, forever. And what if worship in heaven is not what many people imagine? Not endless church services, not floating on clouds, not eternal boredom disguised as spirituality, but something breathtaking, something alive, something joyful, something deeply human. Will we sing? Yes. Will we worship? Absolutely. But according to Scripture, worship in eternity may be far bigger than we ever imagined. Because worship in heaven is not merely something we do, it becomes the atmosphere of everything we are. Today, we explore one of the deepest questions about eternity. What will it actually mean for God to dwell among us? And what will worship in heaven really be like? And the answer may completely transform how you see eternity. When most people think about heaven, they focus on what is missing. No death, no sickness, no suffering, no anxiety, no tears. And all of that is true. But according to Scripture, removing pain is not heaven's greatest miracle. God's presence is. Listen carefully to the climax of the Bible. Revelation 21:3. Behold, God's dwelling is with people, and He will dwell with them, and they will be His people, and God Himself will be with them as their God. Think about this. The greatest promise is not, you will never cry again. Though that is beautiful. The greatest promise is not, you will have joy. Though that is true. The greatest promise is, God Himself will be with us, forever, fully, without separation, without barriers, without sin, without distance. And here is what many Christians miss. This has always been God's plan, from the beginning. Many people think the Bible is mainly a story about humanity trying to find God. But Scripture tells the opposite story. It is about God pursuing humanity. The whole Bible moves toward one destination, God dwelling with His people again. In Eden, God walked with Adam and Eve. There was intimacy, closeness, fellowship, no shame, no fear, no separation. Genesis paints a picture of humans fully alive in the presence of God. But sin shattered that intimacy. Humanity was exiled, not merely from a garden, but from unhindered fellowship with God. And from that moment onward, God begins moving back toward humanity. Listen to God's promise. Leviticus 26:11-12. I will set my tent among you. I will walk among you and will be your God, and you will be my people. Then came the tabernacle, God dwelling among Israel. Then the temple, a place where heaven touched earth. But there was still distance, curtains, boundaries, fear. Only priests could enter certain spaces. Then came Jesus, and suddenly everything changed. John 1:14. The Word became flesh and lived among us. The phrase lived among us literally means He tabernacled among us. God moved into the neighborhood. God with us. Emmanuel. And through Christ, the separation began to collapse. But even now, something still remains unfinished. We still experience distance. We still walk by faith. We still pray without seeing. We still long, still ache, still wait. But one day, faith becomes sight, and God's dwelling with humanity becomes complete. Here is one of the most astonishing promises in all Scripture. Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Revelation 22:4 says, they will see His face. Pause there. They. will see his face. Not symbolically, not distantly, not vaguely. We will actually behold God. For thousands of years, humanity has longed for this. Moses asked to see God's glory, yet he could only glimpse part of it, because sinful humanity could not survive the fullness of divine holiness. But in eternity, everything changes. We are resurrected, glorified, made whole, prepared for direct relationship with God. 1 Corinthians 13:12. For now, we see in a mirror darkly, but then face to face. Can you imagine that moment? The first moment you see Jesus, not through imagination, not through prayer, not through faith, but with resurrected eyes. You see the one who carried your suffering, the one who heard every prayer, the one who forgave every failure, the one who never abandoned you. And suddenly, everything makes sense. Every pain, every delay, every unanswered prayer, every lonely night. Because now, you are finally home. Here is an honest question many people quietly wonder. If eternity never ends, won't heaven eventually become ordinary? Won't even God's presence become familiar? The answer Scripture points toward is no. Why? Because God is infinite. You never reach the end of him. Never. Psalm 145:3. His greatness is unsearchable. Think about this. If God is infinitely wise, infinitely beautiful, infinitely creative, then eternity becomes an endless discovery of wonder. You never stop learning, never stop growing, never stop being amazed. C.S. Lewis once imagined eternity as moving further up and further in, always deeper, always richer, always more beautiful. Imagine standing before the ocean, but every time you look, new beauty appears, new depth, new mystery. Now multiply that infinitely. That is God. Heaven is not static, it is eternal discovery. Now, let's address one of the biggest misconceptions. Many people secretly fear heaven because they imagine this: an endless church service, forever, singing, standing, repeating songs, no mission, no creativity, no exploration, no meaningful activity, just eternal repetition. And quietly. Many wonder, wouldn't that become boring? But Scripture paints something much bigger. Yes, there will be singing, absolutely. Revelation describes worship, praise, celebration, and songs before God. Revelation 5:13. To him who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb be the blessing, the honor, the glory, and the dominion forever and ever. But worship in Scripture is much larger than music. Romans 12:1. Present your bodies a living sacrifice, which is your spiritual service. Worship is not merely singing. Worship is living fully for God. It is delight, love, joy, purpose, creation, beauty, relationship, meaning, everything fully centered around him. In heaven, all of life becomes worship. Here is something profound. Many people think heaven means becoming less human, less emotional, less physical, less alive. But Scripture points the opposite direction. Heaven restores humanity. We become more fully ourselves, more alive, more joyful, more creative, more relational, without sin, without fear, without exhaustion, without insecurity. Imagine music without pride, art without ego, work without burnout, relationships without betrayal, celebration without emptiness, joy without anxiety, everything beautiful about life without the brokenness. Even eating and feasting appear in Scripture. Jesus said, Matthew 26:29, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom. A meal with Jesus. Think about that. Laughter, conversation, joy, presence, not less life, more life. What if worship in eternity looks like this? Walking through breathtaking beauty, creating, building, learning, discovering, and all of it becomes worship, serving others, reigning with Christ, exploring God's renewed creation, fellowship, celebration, joy, music, learning, meaning, everything flowing from love for God. Because worship is not confined to a room, worship becomes the heartbeat of existence. 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Whatever you do. That sounds like eternity. Everything infused with God's presence. Let's answer the question honestly. Will heaven ever become boring? No. And here is why. Boredom comes from limitation, repetition, brokenness, fatigue, meaninglessness, sin. But heaven removes all of those. God is infinite. Creation is renewed. Purpose continues. Relationships deepen. Wonder increases. Joy expands. And worship flows endlessly. Psalm 16:11. In your presence is fullness of joy. In your right hand there are pleasures forevermore. Did you catch that? Pleasures forevermore. Not temporary joy. Not fading happiness. Not repetitive emptiness. Forever joy. Forever discovery. Forever fulfillment. Forever meaning. Because the center of heaven is not a place. It is a person. And that person is endlessly beautiful. Maybe the deepest longing of the human heart is not success, not money, not achievement, not even happiness. Maybe what we have always longed for is home. And perhaps every beautiful moment here, love, beauty, friendship, worship, peace, has only been a whisper of something greater coming. One day, the distance ends. One day, faith becomes sight. One day, the ache inside us finally settles. And Revelation says, Revelation 21:3, behold, God's dwelling is with people, not visiting us, dwelling with us, forever. And when that day comes, we will realize something astonishing. The greatest treasure of heaven was never heaven itself. It was always God. If this episode encouraged you, comment below. What are you most looking forward to about heaven? And if this changed how you think about eternity, share this episode with someone who needs hope today. Because heaven is not the end of life. It is the beginning of the life we were always created for.